I personally think that using AI in coding interviews should be encouraged. But when I told this to a hiring manager the other day, his eyes got like this. The question is, what does this shift actually mean for how we hire and get hired? Because AI doesn't lower the bar for great engineers. It raises it by forcing us to interview for system ownership, not just code generation. So in this video, we are going to shed light on three things. First, the one signal that separates doers from talkers, something called fractal knowledge. Second, how to turn system design interviews into a reality check for ownership. And third, the exact AI-powered coding interview that we can use to find engineers who truly know how to ship software solutions that solve real problems. And by the end of this video, you will have a concrete framework for hiring engineers who can build, own, and scale reliable systems with AI as their co-pilot. So let's dive in. You know, AI is getting extremely good at writing code these days, but still someone has to put their name on it, right? Someone has to be on call when the things break at 3 a.m. In the end, people and the business pay for a reliable service, not for a pile of code. So the question is not anymore if you can write code. Instead, it is, can you own the system yourself, end to end? And the most important signal for ownership is something called fractal knowledge. The more you have truly worked on something, the more detail you know about it. This way, your knowledge expands in infinite detail, like a fractal. So my favorite screening question to a candidate nowadays is simple. I ask, tell me about a past project that you built. What did you build? How did it go? And we will dig from it. Then I just keep asking how, again and again and again, and what happened next. And then I go deeper and deeper and deeper. Great candidates can go for hours into this loop. Every answer reveals more detail we could explore. Like for example, if they say the service call the API, then I ask, well, how? What protocol? What happens if the network fails? And if the candidate says, we release it and it was broken, then I ask, well, how did you know? What did the metrics show? What did you learn? You see the pattern, right? And with this approach, you can feel the depth in the knowledge of the candidate. So you also quickly find the edges in their experience. And when the candidate hasn't done the job, actually, they talk around the details. They cannot dive in. And the more you ask, the more they avoid the nitty-gritty details. So in my experience, this technique is the best filter for hands-on experience. And as we will see, it is also the key to leveling a candidate in the system design round. So from this point, now we can escalate from a project they have done to a new problem they need to solve. The system design interview is the next place to look for the same fractal details. But most people get this interview wrong. They focus on the boxes and arrows the candidate draws in the whiteboard, but the real signal is the questions the candidate asks you. Because here's the thing, now we are hiring for brains, not just for coding skills. We need someone to get us over the water, not just building the bridge we described. If we could have thinking about everything, then there is no need for a human, right? So you can just have an AI and ask it to write the whole code base. Does the candidate push back on assumptions? Does he clarify ambiguous requirements? You can ask about operational concerns like failure modes. For example, an entry-level candidate might ask about syntax or something specific to the code. But on the other hand, a senior candidate will start asking about the SLAs and SLOs, observability, and how it's gonna be the on-call rotation for the new service. And this is how you separate someone who has only read about the system from someone who has actually built it and maintained it for real. Reading about system design will give you a high-level map, but doing the work is gonna give you the fractal details of knowing the territory. It exposes the illusion of explanatory depth, where we think we understand something just because it is familiar. And this type of interview forces them to control the edges of their knowledge. So here's the new coding interview format. Finally, when it comes to traditional coding interview, here is where you sit with someone as you ask her to deal with these, LeetCode coding problems. I think it is a complete waste of time these days, actually. And by the way, I was an ACM ICPC contestant back in the days when I was at the university. I think these LeetCode puzzles are a waste of time because the real-world problems are never that clean. You don't get the perfectly pre-digested problem statement right away these days. So instead, I suggest to give the candidate a setup that mirrors real work. And stubbed out code base, a database, a few tests, a clean business problem, API documentation and authentication credentials for a real third-party service. And then we say, okay, you can use Google, you can use any tool you want, and you can ask me questions. So go ahead and build it. And the goal is a working prototype in about 1 hour, something like that. And it is really possible to do it nowadays with AI. And this kind of interview format doesn't test memorization. It tests if you can navigate an unfamiliar code base, read documentation, ask smart business questions, and critically leverage AI to ship faster, not just to produce a function or two that does some kind of algorithm. In this case, using AI actually raises the bar for coding interviews. It means that we can build more in that hour, so we can, and we actually should, talk about what really matters. So how do you make this reliable? What happens when the API goes down? How do you scale this in 18 months? Those are the kind of questions that are possible now because the code is not a bottleneck anymore. This is a high-signal interview because it simulates the actual job of a modern software engineer. So how you gonna hire engineers in the age of AI? Well, you stop treating interviews like a closed book exam. It should be like an open book. You got the engineer access to everything, you embrace the tools, and you raise the bar. And the common thread is fractal knowledge, the deep, detailed understanding that only comes from doing the work. You find it by digging into past projects. You test for it by listening to the questions a candidate has during the system design. And you verify it with a realistic coding challenge that favors ownership over memorization. And this is how you find the people who don't just write code, but who build and own reliable systems. And if you want me to make more videos on building high-performing engineering teams, in the AI era, please subscribe to this channel or write a comment down below. Thank you very much for watching and see you in the next one. Bye.